Hi, Christian.
Hello.
We were just talking about a few things, just having our Sunday chat, and something else is like, do you want to say anything about yourself?
What are you asking me?
Well, yeah. I mean,
No, we were talking before you started recording. We were talking about you and
I
a
know.
certain chapter of from your life, and how are you turning this on me now?
Because it's turnaround is fair play. No, I mean,
No, I do not want to. I don't have anything interesting to share about me at this point. How about you?
you know me probably better than anybody.
Specifically, where were you like in the early 2000s?
Mm. Well, the last time we talked in the part that we didn't record, I was telling you about my time with Alejandro and the Mandato and how that keeps replaying certain aspects of it, keep replaying in the present moment with me and things that I didn't understand then that I now understand. And what a strange part of my life. And it's not anything that anybody that wasn't exposed to that could really understand. So it's kind of a unique type experience. So,
Can I ask you how did you met them?
ah, well, okay. That's actually part of the story because, in a way, I was put under a spell. I was tapped. I was looked at. I was seen. And before I even knew about Alejandro and the people involved with him, um, and it didn't come back to me till years later, like probably in like 19 trying to think, it was my boutique was remade. So it was like in the early 2000s. Uh, a very dapper looking Mexican gentleman with a goatee came into my shop with his younger wife. And she was busy looking at my dresses and trying them on. And he was sitting, I had a curved counter, right? Like, and I'm behind the counter. And he put his elbow, and what he would always do is he would take his right hand and he would rub his beard, right? And he had a diamond ring on his little finger, and he had a sparkle in his eye, kind of like the diamond. And I thought they were intriguing people, and I liked them. Uh, but I didn't think any more of it. It wasn't until years later I realized that he had already marked me. And so a fellow and his wife that I did business with, they would bring jewelry from Indonesia. They started courting me, basically, is what happened. And we became friends. And so
What do you mean courting you?
they were just really friendly. Their two daughters played with Amber, but they knew what they were doing. I had no idea there was something called the Mandato. I had no idea that they had this teacher named Alejandro who said he was Prometheus. I mean, I knew nothing about any of that. And so I would go visit,
And
huh?
so they were part of the Mandato.
They were part of the Mandato. And then later on, when my life just really fell apart at one point, well, actually, it fell apart in a way, like my outer reality started cracking, but I was like walking on the other side too. So I was having visions and memories and just so much stuff was going on, right? So I was seeing things that I'd never seen before. So I was half in the world and half out, and it was intense trying to navigate my life and run my shop and be a mother, and at the same time having all these energies kind of colliding inside of me. So I would go, his name was Rosendo. He had a little esoteric bookstore, and he was a tarot card reader. That's the guy that was selling me jewelry. So I would start to sit in his shop and I would just go talk to him. And at one point, just very spontaneous, we were in the back room where he did the tarot readings. I looked at him and I went, "You have a teacher, don't you?" And he looked at me and he was like, "Yeah." And I said, "I want to meet your teacher." And so he gave me a pen and paper, and they only wrote in blue ink. And then he asked me a series of questions, and he said, just write down whatever comes to you. So I did. And he said, he read what I wrote. I don't remember exactly what I wrote. He said, okay, you can start coming to Tuesday meetings. We meet at 5 o'clock at my house. And so that's how I ended up in the Mandato. And
Wait, you mean back then Alejandro, the teacher, was in San Miguel?
no, he was in Querétaro, the town close to
Okay.
us. But I didn't meet Alejandro. I only met, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us that met regularly. And mostly what was, it wasn't like a teaching. It's not like you go into some mystery school and they start telling you the secrets of the universe or anything like that. Mostly of what it was, there was some explanation about the 12 concepts that the Mandato was under. I've tried to remember them all and I can't, but that's not important at the moment. So really what we would do, we'd end up sitting around a big round table, and we would have a series of 3, 6, or 9, sometimes 12 questions that we all would free flow of consciousness answer the questions, right? So I find that very valuable, and I did then too, because it was bringing something from your inner self or your communication with a higher self, if you want to call it that. And so none of that like bothered me, right? I mean, it seemed like a very good practice. I became very good friends with everybody. And, but underneath it all, like always is there, are these human egos doing battle in the shadow world. And of course, I didn't see that completely at the time. That later became revealed to me. Yeah, so that's how it started, Christian. And at
Okay.
one point,
So
okay, go ahead, ask me.
there was a teacher in Querétaro. There was like a guru figure in Querétaro. There was a leader there, or who organized everything?
It all came from out through Alejandro.
Even
Okay,
though you never met him,
I
at this
hadn't met,
point you didn't, yeah.
no, I hadn't met him. So Alejandro was passed. He was in his 80s at that time. So he's an older man, this is, so, and I would think that he would object to be calling a guru. You know what I mean? He was very enigmatic, very mysterious. When he talked, because I did finally meet him. Yeah, so about maybe 6, 7 months after I was going to the Tuesday meetings, we were told one day that we were going to Querétaro to meet Alejandro to his house. So that was the first meeting I ever had with him. And it was strange. And anyways, we ended up in his house. It's, it's decorated like, kind of Mexican bright colors, and very typical Mexican middle class home. And at that point, I think I was just like kind of awestruck, like wide-eyed, like looking at everything and what's going on here and what's this all about. And then oddly, he takes out a big sword. Okay. And so the sword gets passed from hand to hand to hand. And after it got back to him, he looked at Rosendo, who was kind of his main trainee, I would say. And he got really angry, and he said, "You haven't done a good job with these people. None of them are prepared. None of them know anything. They're all a mess." Right. And so it was always like, there was always this mix of symbology and him being the master. Okay, I will say that he saw himself as the master. And, became obvious that we were all supposed to do whatever Alejandro said and not question it. That became one of the set foundations of it. Like, no matter what he asked us
And
to do, we had to follow what he
back
said.
back then you're okay with that?
I'm curious, Christian. I was okay with it. And there's several reasons. And, it was at the time I was aware of it, but much more in retrospect. I knew that I had a lot of energy. I was really capable of, with my energy, kind of manipulating the reality around me. So I also knew that I wanted to break free of something. I didn't even know what it was at the time. But I knew that
Okay.
from having read all the Carlos Castaneda books and my experience with Pete and all of that, I knew that I needed to break free of a lot of beliefs and cultural indoctrination. And ultimately, it was break free of the ego's hold on me. So I was okay with that. And that's the thing is like he didn't, it changed later, but he didn't ask us to do harm. You know what I mean? But he was playing with us. He was playing with us all the time. So I was very curious by the whole thing. And then we were given the name of Portadores de la Luz Cósmica, which means bearers of the cosmic light. And apparently we had a mission, and that, I guess, that was pretty clear, was to bring the light from the cosmos back into the earth realm. But it was never explained like that. That's the thing that was so enigmatic about it, is like you just went along and then you'd get these realizations along the way of different revealings, different things that were happening. And I know he was testing us all the time, in one way or the other. He would pit us against each other. He would observe us closely to how we reacted. And eventually in 2003, he announced that we needed to move. I might get my dates wrong. I'm not good with dates, but basically he said he got, the communication that we were to move to the beach. And because of my energy and because I was really the only one financially well off at that time, I kind of was given I was made point person on going and looking for properties, looking for where we should settle. So I made several trips with a couple of the other people, and, all with the idea that the whole group would stay together and that we would move to the coast. And, which eventually happened.
What coast? Which coast was that?
South of Puerto Vallarta. We were looking around
Puerto
Barra de
okay.
Navidad, Malaque, that whole area between Vallarta and you were there, right? We went that way.
Yeah, I know. I'm just asking, documenting facts. So the West Coast.
I want to try to, it's like a big period of my life, and to try to put it into something concise is, because what's more important about all of it was what I learned through it. However, back to
Okay, but what went, I mean, through your mind and through your spirit, what went when you are called to go look for a property to buy and presumably contribute with a large sum of money, and the moving on itself, because you had a, I don't know, a teenage daughter, or and have a shop and a business, and what went through your mind? Like, how are you how are you supposed to go
Okay, so
about it?
so what went through my mind is a really good question. Okay. I was on a ride. I was in a huge energy adventure. So it wasn't a process of logically figuring things out at all. At all. I mean, and I think there's a really good lesson in that when something taps you and it takes you on a thing. So we were having a blast. The trips to the beach were laughter and jokes and, I mean, there was just a sense of heightened adventure, of heightened life, like, you know, I'm breaking free. I'm breaking free from a shop. My daughter was already actually in the late teen years, so she was already having her own adventure in her life and trying to figure out who she was. And and I know, I mean, I know, and that's why I'm so close to her today. I was an extremely loving, caring, nurturing mother. So she had a good foundation, you know, and I did everything I could during her upbringing to keep her not safe from the world because I like adventure, but mostly like, let's say, safe from the predators, the things that want to, you know, take somebody down, you know, a path of alcohol or partying or sex or whatever. So she was already foundationally in a good place. And she is, she's proven that to me. But back to the going to the beach and what I was thinking, I wasn't. I felt like I had gotten free. And I'm with these really crazy ass people. And I mean, they're crazy in the sense that they're normal people, but I mean, we just have fun. You know, and all of a sudden I'm swimming in the ocean for hours at a time, and you know, and everything seemed really right at that moment. Like this is the path I need to be on. So it wasn't
So
that.
you don't have any regret
No,
regarding that.
I
You
honestly don't. I mean, I really,
okay?
really don't, because I think regrets come, if I was like, I mean, I know my actions, like separating from my family and my daughter and all of that. I know that that caused them distress. I know it caused them distress, certain friends that I had that didn't understand what was happening with me. Uh, you know, it was distressing to them. It was, but it wasn't about them. You know, it wasn't about hurting them or wanting to show them anything. It was just simply, I was taking off on a path on life that very few people ever do. And I know now, many years in retrospect, that by having done that, I actually set my daughter, my mother, my father, and my brothers free from whatever entanglement we had of expectations. And you know,
Okay.
so that's why I don't have regrets. That's why I don't. And the story.
If we go back to you were at the beach and looking for properties, and I assume at some point you bought something.
No, we never, well, we did later on, but so yeah, anyways, we ended up renting a house, which I paid for. And it was a 4-bedroom house, and I moved into the house with 2 other people uh and Alejandro's wife and son. And so during that time, we actually started businesses. We started a cafe, we started a decorating business, we started a Chinese restaurant, and another little boutique. And so all that was getting funded, and each of us had our role to play in the businesses. And meanwhile, we were pretty noticeable because we were really different, right? I mean, people took note. I mean, who's this older man with this trail of younger people behind him? And so once we built the cafe, we rented the property in a trailer park, and we built the cafe from the ground up. And I basically became in charge of it. That was my thing there. And so I was running a cafe.
Cafe Calypso.
Yeah, Cafe Calypso, Viva Calypso. I wanted to call it Calypso, but Alejandro said it had to be Viva Calypso. And so we pretty much installed ourselves there. And, you know, so we would still have get together. It changed. And at one point, Alejandro had a little ceremony, simple. There was no like crystals or incense or chanting or anything, where he said we were brothers and sisters and that we would be linked throughout time. And I remember that well. And, you know, we had this little thing of like taking the right pinky finger and holding the person next to us pinky finger, like linking us. And, you know, for me at that point, I trusted that. I trusted that I had brothers and sisters. I trusted that we would take care of each other. I trusted a lot. And so, and because also what was happening during that time, I was being lifted up like Super Chris, you know, Super Christina, you know, she can do anything. Just ask her to do it and she'll do it, you know. And I could, and I did. I was very good at that, manifesting. But we'd still get together, and we weren't writing as much then, but we'd sit together and then we would ask these questions, and we would, you know, speak forth what we were understanding. But then this thing started happening, and it was like, it was put into us that anybody that put obstacles in our way or weren't honest with us or weren't whatever, that we were supposed to mark them. Like we were going to mark them so the conceptual gods would take care of them in future lives. That was the basic tenet of that. And what it was actually in the air putting an X on their back, like not putting an X on them, but energetically marking them. And that started me not feeling exactly right about everything. And it was, I don't even think I brought it fully to consciousness. It was there in me, right? Like, who am I to do this? Who am I to mark other people, you know? So I was sort of out of accord just with that feeling in me. And then I started having, phenomena happen. Like I was in my bed one day, going to sleep at night, and like a big shadow creature. You know how these astral creatures are. They're not like, this wasn't like, you know, like physical completely, but I could see the shadow, and it just started shaking my bed, right? Like shaking, 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 shaking. You know, so that happened. I had other things happen, but the energy was changing from me being like the, you know, the star, right? You know, she can do anything. She's really great, to like this darker energy coming in. And I think when it really, well, I know I had a really lucid dream. I was in the coffee shop, and a male, female dark entities came in, and I ended up physically wrestling with them. I was in a battle. I mean, full on battle mode, right? Like trying to preserve my sense of being. They had me on the ground, they pinned me down, I got up. Don't remember exactly how that dream ended, other than probably I woke up quite startled.
Where do you suppose all this negativity came from?
Well, you know, what came into my consciousness then, that it was Alejandro and Esther, his wife, or their shadow side, or their darker side, or something else. I didn't want to think that, but that's what it felt like. If I'm honest, that's what it felt like. And
so there were some aspects brought upon by them. They were responsible for these evil aspects.
well, I don't know if they were
Alejandro and his
responsible.
wife.
I mean, that's the thing about the subconscious, is that you don't know if the being is conscious of what's
Well,
inside of them. You know what I mean? I mean, I can't say that for sure, except for if I go on with the story, maybe it clarifies.
okay, go on.
So I had this girl in the shop that she was my right hand. She was a hired Mexican woman. She was in her 30s. who was just loyal to the shop, hardworking woman, always there. Became very involved because we'd have some of our talks and she'd be there. I mean, she wasn't in the group, but she would, and everything was in Spanish. So one day she came into the store, not too long after I had that dream, and she had like just fear on her face. Like, I mean, she's like, Senora, Senora, there's demons following you. There's demons trying to get you. And so she had had a dream the night before of like massive amount of demonics coming after me. And she was obviously freaked out by it. And she was such a good person. I mean, I would say employee, but she was more than that. And after she shared that with me, and I probably shared it with somebody in the group, they got together without me and then came in and announced that we had to fire her. That we had to mark her and fire her, which for me was, at that point, I'm going, what's going on here? What's going on here? You know, and I couldn't break away and express at that point my disagreement with the whole thing, because it was powerful. I mean, if you've ever been under a powerful spell or you've been pulled into a group like that, you're living in an alternate reality. You can't really translate it to
Can you name it? Can you use the word cult on that
I could
group?
say cult. I could say cult. I could, you know, cult-like behavior. Yeah, I could say that. And yet, you know, I've always resisted it because people have such a set idea of what cult is, right? But it's an appropriate word. It is. Yeah, and then they fired her. And then I was having other phenomena happening to me, dreams of being chased by like demons. And then one day I was just standing out in front of the cafe staring at the ocean, like, you know, just kind of tranced out. And it was like this black force just came at me. And yet somehow I projected like headlights of a vehicle almost. They were that bright, like just popped out of me, right? And I just stood there and, you know, I'm learning things, right, Christian? I have, in retrospect, with hindsight, I can see what was going on. At the time, I was just experiencing these things. I had no,
But you never had this kind of experiences before being in the Mandato?
yeah, I had one other really heavy experience with another Mexican sorcerer who tried to kill me, basically.
Where do you find these guys? I mean, your life is full of Mexican sorcerers, wizards, and I mean,
Uh, yeah. I mean, at this point,
no, but I mean, on your own, with nobody influencing you. You
uh,
never, you did at that point. You never had this kind of attacks or this
oh no,
brush with demonic.
no, I had spent the early part of my life in Mexico when I finally got my shit together. You know, when I had Amber and I built a house and I built a business, I was very focused on making a structured, normal life within the paradigm. Right? You know, the
Okay.
white picket fence, the nice house in the country, you know, I
Yeah,
was,
but sometimes even being focused on the white picket fence, you still have experiences. So that was I was curious.
well,
Okay, so
no, it started to break apart for me when I realized, okay, and this goes back into the 1990s, when I was part of I would say a metaphysical Christian group, you know, and it wasn't just metaphysical Christians, it was just a group that got together on Sunday and there was prayer work and this and that. I'll talk about later, maybe not in this thing about the Rosicrucians, but so I seriously, like within me, I wanted to know. I didn't want to just get knowledge out of books and other people. It was like something in me moved and it wanted to have the experience of knowledge and knowing. And that's when everything started changing for me. And so I feel like life presented me with these sorcerers and these experiences because I had to know. And anybody that's aware at this point knows that you have to go into the shadow. You have to go into the dark. And that's why I
What's
think,
the difference? What's the difference between a sorcerer and a wizard?
and a Wiccan,
A wizard,
a wizard,
like if you
not
say,
much,
yeah,
you know, I mean,
is it the same thing, or I'm just wanting to learn subtleties of the English language. For me, are the same is the same word, but it's for you is the same. Why
yeah,
don't you use the word wizard?
because in Mexico, sorcery is more common. And I think people relate to, if you've read Carlos Castaneda or you've read any of the Mexican thing, when I think of wizard, like the image that pops into me is like a Celt, right? It's like it's like
Okay,
a European,
like a
it's the same thing.
so
They're magicians.
yeah,
They're beings that understand magic and how to manipulate it.
yeah, they're both magicians,
Mhm.
yeah, sorcerer. Okay,
So,
so you're on the beach and that lady got fired,
uh-huh.
and then
And then
what
the
happened?
energy, all of a sudden the energy started shifting and I became the target, let's say. Like I wasn't the bright light anymore. Now I was the dark one and I was going to release demons. I mean, I was accused of being able to release demons from the depths. So everything I did became suspect. Everything.
Who told you that?
All of them. They got together. They were getting together and I wasn't involved in it. So it was being imposed upon me that, and it was, and then all of a sudden, instead of being bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and laughing, they were looking at me like, I'd walk out on a cliff, like over the ocean on a promontory, and I would have like, oh, Christine, be careful. You're going to, if you put your hand up and you let out light, you're going to release demons. And you're going, so all of a sudden I became the evil one.
But for sure, Alejandro had to set the tone for this
Oh, yeah,
kind of shenanigans, right? I
yeah,
mean,
exactly.
he had to agree, and at least
He had to promote it.
maybe, yeah, maybe actually, I don't. That's for you to say, but I'm curious. Maybe he actually didn't believe everything, but he was playing with the others and playing them against you for some reason, or
I think now I do know that's what was happening, or that's how I perceive it now. That because he was a magician or a sorcerer, he could move the energy in ways. And because everybody was supposed to do everything he said. So if he said, Christine's attacking the cosmic light and she's dangerous, they automatically would start seeing me that way. And I can't
but
answer any of them questioned in their
how
own
how come you
conscious.
didn't get like fired? They didn't tell you to leave on the spot. I mean, I know they they told you later on to go and you have to leave. You had to leave, but why was that delay? Like I don't know, month or year or whatever it was. Why do you think that delay? If they were
Mm,
talking and they knew this about you or that was spoke
their
about you,
perception.
rightly or not, what was the delay on telling you you have to leave?
First of all, there was this underlying thing like, anybody can come back to the light, right? Like, I mean, it never was talked about in psychological terms or anything. It was like a testing. And also, we were in the middle of finishing a construction of a 3-story apartment complex. We were in the final stages of that, right? So we designed it, uh, and
Were you financing that?
not all of it, but I ended up spending all of the rest of my money on it. Yes, I did. And the last thing we were doing was building a swimming pool, and I pretty much financed that. So there was all of it. I mean, this is about, you know the story, and I'll get to it. So I'm still like you know, with thinking these are my brothers and sisters and we're linked and we're about the cosmic light. And, you know, the whole thing is that we each were going to have a little apartment within this complex that we built. And we each even had already figured out and assigned our rooms. And we built a nicer place for Esther and a nicer place for Alejandro. And so we're in the middle of a project, right? So while this other shit's going on, we're still in activity in the world, right? So it wasn't constant. And yeah, so I mean, the way it worked out, you know, the way it came about, it's just a weird juxtaposition, because also I was handling all the finances and the bookkeeping and collecting the money from the business. And, you know, I mean, it's like there felt like there was still some trust there. But it was getting weirder and weirder. And so the day that I was going to move into the building and my room, all of a sudden, I'll name them: Rosendo, Carolina, Kate, and Carmen show up in my doorstep where I was living and said, you have to leave right now. And you have to get out of here right now. And they started throwing some of my stuff in my car.
That when you ran out of money, they threw you out.
Obviously not. But the
So
other,
in that way, do you feel used? Do you feel like they took advantage of you?
no, I don't, I just don't, and I don't have, and I've never had, is the sense of victimhood. So I
No,
realized fully,
just facts, not victimhood, just
oh,
cold
it's set
facts.
free, Christian. People don't understand the hold that possessions and money have over them. I had to go
I
prove
know,
myself.
maybe they did you a huge favor, but they were assholes in their
No.
way. I mean,
Oh, they were,
yeah.
I have no, they were assholes. They, you know, in the end, they betrayed themselves. And I think it was a setup, because they weren't able to stand on their own. You know, they weren't able to generate from
But
within own
in
consciousness.
the end, all of it had to be Alejandro and nobody else, right?
I would say so, except for, yeah, of course, but because I was handed this curse. I mean, I was literally handed a triple bound curse of the worst type that anybody could have, like on the next 7 generations down from me. If I
And you
ever
believed in that?
disobeyed them, I was going to be damned for all time. I was going to
And
be
you believed in
isolated.
that?
Huh?
You believed in that curse?
No. I mean, yes, I went through terror. I did. But I tell you, when I drove out of there and I was headed north, the first thing that came into my mind is, I'm free. The very first thing I thought, I'm free.
Okay, but you didn't went to San Miguel to see your daughter or anything.
No, because I was being chased by literally legions of demons.
Okay, that's never fun.
No, and I went through unbelievable terror on my journey north. I didn't know where I was going. So yes, in a way, I believed in the curse. I wasn't even supposed, if anybody helped me ever again in my life, they were going to be cursed too. That was what the curse was. So I'm realizing a few days, well, I went to see a couple friends in Puerto Vallarta, and I literally couldn't talk. to them. Because I was under the effect of a curse. Yes, I was. So I couldn't even ask for help. And so I realized that I don't have help. I don't have anybody. I can't ask for anybody for help. So all I knew was the dictate, drive north. And so I'm driving north. I have no papers anymore. I had all my papers in the embassy in Colima. I was going to get my Mexican citizenship. And I went through unbelievable nights of terror, and I was actually isolated at one point, so I know what that feels like. I know what happens to a soul when you're left with consciousness and yet can never interact with anything ever again. It was probably the worst night I had. So, and I'm in some funky, cheap hotel in Tamaulipas somewhere. And it was thunder and lightning storm. And I mean, it was like, however,
Did you ever felt that? Did you ever felt you have like a hidden hand helping you or something like that?
a hidden sense of what?
A hidden hand, a hidden hand, a hidden. You have hidden friends helping you. Did you ever feel like somebody was watching
Yes,
and
yes.
made sure that you're kind of okay-ish, like you don't go
Yeah. I feel
dark
like
all the way?
yeah, I feel like I have a very actually large, probably more than one, but there's always been a sense of a protector, a guide. But the way it's
Like
all,
spirit guides?
yeah, not spirit guides. It's deeper than that. And it'll often, and it's happened many, many years, and it still happens. Like when I'm in like that half wake, half sleep state, I get the face of a lion coming out of the ether, and just there. It's not like communication. It's not like I'm channeling anything or anything like that. It's just present. It's like presence. It's like, yeah. So, yes. And a matter of
Is
fact,
that
that
is
was
that
also recognized when I was in the Mandato, like Alejandro would say, you've got a huge energy around you. You have a huge energy guide. So
do you
that's
know when did he die? Do you know that?
I'm not positive of it. I was I can't remember years, Christian, I'm sorry, but it was during the time I was with Bill, and I was in Idaho, and I was staying at George Green's house, condo, in
Okay.
Coeur d'Alene. I
Do
had,
you want to make a resume of exactly because you spoke about him and what he did and how he led and this and that, but can you, what exactly do you think he was and where do you think maybe he went? Where is he now? But where
well,
was he coming from? And yeah,
yeah, well, he maintained he was Prometheus. Okay. And the only reason I'm like, anybody can say that. I'm Cleopatra, I'm Prometheus, I'm Mary Magdalene, I'm this, I'm that. Although he told the story, and he told it many times, in a pretty, how would I say it? There was a lot of feeling behind him telling his story. So I'll give the little story of Alejandro. He grew up in Mexico City. His mother was a seamstress. He didn't have a father. And so he kind of was a street urchin, right? And he always felt like he wasn't in the right place. This is his story. Now I'm telling his story. So he always was like, he felt like he wasn't supposed to be born in Mexico. He was very intelligent, very talented, very psychic. And at one point, three older men, this is when he's young, call them sorcerers. They tapped him, right? and they started teaching him things, and I don't know all of the teachings. But during that time, he was walking down a street in Mexico City when, let's just say, the spirit of Prometheus came into him. And he literally went crazy for 3 days, like literally crazy, like running on the street, screaming, and couldn't like the weight of the spirit coming into him so deeply disturbed him. And I mean, if you know the story of Prometheus, I think people can relate.
Yeah, but that's like a Greek legend. Isn't that a Greek legend? It's
It
like
is.
we were talking last time from Legend of Olympus. Isn't that so? And
Well,
he was like a god and who
yeah,
gave
he
the
brought
fire,
fire to
learned brought
mankind.
the fire to humanity. Yeah, and then he was cursed to. But what's that's not very magical. It's not like he was like some sorcerer. Like I don't I
No,
don't follow. Why was he? Why would Prometheus be a sorcerer in Mexico City? I mean,
well,
it
that's what
doesn't
he
sound
said.
like
He
Prometheus to
wasn't,
me.
that's what he always maintained, that he was not supposed to be born in Mexico City. He actually maintained that he was supposed to be born in Germany, and that he was diverted coming in to this place in Mexico. He never felt like he was a Mexican. Matter of fact, he was pretty disgusted with the whole race of Mexicans. But, I mean, just the lack of consciousness and the degradation that he saw of humankind. So in that way, I can relate him to Prometheus, like, and there's more legend behind Prometheus than just the simple Greek story. He was also very, very, very related to the Greeks. That was like he always talked about, he didn't tell the story of Greek mythology, but he always talked about the Greeks, right? So we have Germany, the Greeks, Prometheus. And so you asked me about if I know when he died, going back to that event, or was it? Because I never was advised of it. But one morning I woke up and I knew he was dying because I had projected myself and I was sitting at his bedside in a room.
Okay,
He was on a single
was
bed.
this an astral projection or more like a mind projection?
It was more like it's that between waking and dream state, right? So
Well,
I'm
that can
there,
be astral too. So that can be astral. I mean, a lot of astral things happen in that window.
right?
So, but
Whatever it
doesn't
was,
matter, right?
yeah, I was perceiving being there with him. And I'm thanking him and I'm telling him how much I care for what he gave me. And like I had no rancor towards him whatsoever at all. And
Do you think do you think at any point he felt bad about you, about what
I think
the way?
the last words he ever said to me the day before they kicked me out, I was sitting on his left side, very close to him. And he looked over at me and he said, "Don't disappoint me." That's the last words he said to me. So I
Wow.
do
So,
some way
what
feel
do you
like,
get from that? What do you get from that? Maybe he saw something in your future. I mean, I don't want to lead you, to ask questions that lead you on an answer, so you can always just disregard them. But do you think maybe he saw something in your path that needs
yeah,
to be a certain way?
I,
Yeah.
I know he knows he was testing not just me, but all of us. Okay. There's no doubt about it. We were being tested. How would we act? What will we see? What were our abilities? So only way I can interpret that at this point in my life, I mean, for years I've looked at it and it's been like, yes, I do think he saw something. Because I was tested in a very extreme way. So yes, I do think he perceived something in me. And then when he was leaving body, when I'm in that space with him, I feel him leave his body, right? I feel him, he's dying, right? And so I'm having like telepathic communication with him of like for me, it was clean, it was clear. It's like, I'm never going to hang on to this person. I also want to be free from all of that. And as he's leaving the body, I'm aware of how trapped he is by the weight, And anyways, I ended up running sessions on him. I don't want to go into the names of the whole thing, but I'm running sessions, like fully conscious sessions. And it was all about like, he's trapped, can we free him? And some very, let's say, very well-trained inner sight people, it was like, no, we can't touch him. He's carrying so much darkness. He's like, it was like he had this ball of blackness attached to him, like a ball and chain, but it was energetic. And it was like, no, because he's holding on to this, and if we let it go, it's not going to be it's not the right thing. And so there was nothing to be done. I mean, again, I have to accept whatever soul he really is. There was choice along the line there. And that was what I saw in his passing.
Okay.
And it was later confirmed to me. I don't know how it was confirmed, but I
Do you
guess
think he's incarnated right now again, or he's taking
no.
his time, or he's blocked, stuck somewhere?
I mean,
Maybe
that,
like in the Rudolf Steiner's Eighth Sphere kind of place, or what?
no,
What do
I
you
don't
think?
think that. I mean, this has got to come straight from my gut right now. My answer is no, he didn't reincarnate. But after that, I can't speculate anything. I mean, I'd have to really
Of
like,
course, the answer was supposed to be coming from your gut instinct, because how el how else would you knew? I mean, yeah.
yeah. And so, when,
So
go ahead.
you drove north. You went to US, right?
Yeah. So I,
Why did you stop? I mean, north can be, you can go all the way to Canada, or
well,
why
no,
did you
I
stop?
was, I at some point determined after I got into the United States, and that was a miracle of getting through the border with no papers or anything. I mean, I had my passport, so I got into the US, but like I never got stopped in Mexico, and I did actually get pulled over, at one of the checkpoints, and I didn't have car papers or Mexican papers or anything. And I just sat there silent. I didn't say anything. I didn't argue, and they eventually just waved me through. So I did get into the United States, and I spent the night in Laredo, Texas, and all I had was go north, go north. So I went, okay, how far north can I get? Right? I can get to Alaska. And that somehow appealed to me. Like, I'll get to Alaska.
Wow. I mean, that would have been nice. Come on, the nature there, the forests, and I mean,
Yeah,
it's a bit cold,
right. And what stopped me was I knew
but
I couldn't endure six months of darkness.
you never thought you never thought going to your hometown of
No,
San Diego.
no, because I'd
No.
already like left all that sort of past stuff behind. So I wasn't thinking of running home to safety or anybody or anything. I was like, absolutely no. Yeah, so I'm driving, and it's April, I think, and there was still a lot of snow, and I'm driving through Wyoming, and staying in the cheapest places I could find. I actually stopped in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Night after that trip was heavy duty.
I think we spoke many times, but I just want to ask you again: is rural US awesome? I mean, are there awesome landscapes and awesome nature in all this,
Yes,
in Idaho or
yes.
Wyoming, or I mean,
If you
it's
get
pretty
out,
awesome, right? I never been to US. That's why I'm curious.
yeah. No, I mean,
It's
there's
nice, right?
it's like when you get off the main freeways and you get on the back roads and you're out of cities and stuff, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I love the landscape. I do, especially up through Utah and Wyoming, Montana. There's something really clean and clear up there.
Colorado,
No, I don't like Colorado at all.
Nevada,
No.
nope.
Mm-mm.
Washington State. That's, I guess you like that, right?
No, not even really. It's interesting. What I really find I really like and for spiritual expansion or awareness
It's
or looking,
Montana in North Dakota.
because you've got you're high and you're on these open plains with these big open vistas and tons of sky. So there's something about that environment that allows your consciousness kind of free range.
I mean, that was prime real estate for native people, Indians too. So I mean, they knew something.
Mhm. Yeah, and then you've got these ancient rock outcroppings, and they always speak to me. I mean, mountains and ancient rock outcroppings, they're always emitting some sort of incredible energy, like they're always talking. So I like that type of place. I do. So
Okay, so where did you stop? You went north, but you didn't went all the way to
okay, so I
Alaska,
stopped in Santa
unfortunately.
Fe and I had some jewelry and I had some paintings. I don't even, they just threw shit in my car, right? So I went to a pawn shop, not a pawn shop, a secondhand store, and I sold my jewelry and my paintings. So I had some money. Not much, but I had at least some cash on me. And so I'm driving north and actually pulling out of Santa Fe, New Mexico that night. I parked my car to sleep on the side of the highway. And that was another torment of demonic energies, literally shaking my car off, howling and shaking my car all night long.
Do you think you carry them with you? Because I don't know. I probably I'm thinking that the only way to be spot on you like that is that at least one or two were within your body with you, and they're just like, because otherwise, if you go so far away and they're not with you, with, or should I say within you, it's actually kind of, maybe I'm wrong, but from what I know, kind of hard to keep track on you, to be to be like, to be so spot
But I
on.
was so frightened, Christian. And that was the thing about fear. We'll talk about that another time. I mean, it was like keeping me in a state of
No,
terror.
but the question was, do you think they were within you? I mean, it's nothing
It's
happens all the time.
possible. Let's say maybe I made a deal in a past life. I could have, I
I
could,
don't.
wait, let me finish, okay? But no,
Yeah.
I mean, the demons that I was experiencing, they definitely weren't coming from inside of me, although, I mean, that's always a possibility because of the way I saw them streaming, like
No,
pacing.
maybe you don't. Maybe you don't understand. I don't mean like your projections or your dark self or your shadows. I don't mean that. I mean, um, they attach to you, and then they live in your body and affect your thoughts and your thinking. Not, I'm not done. I'm not making this your fault or your inner darkness or inner shadow. That's different. But what I'm saying is that's why you have to, develop good spiritual hygiene, because that can happen to anybody anywhere.
Mhm.
You go to a place or and then something's grabbed, something's attached to you, and if you're kind of psychic, you notice notice immediately. But if you're not, or you're going through so many things like you were back then, maybe it was harder to spot. But from my experience, because I didn't want to, but that exactly what you are describing things is when you have an attachment that you're unaware of, and then when you go to sleep, and you go either to sleep, because it's not necessarily the astral, but when you go into the astral or just sleeping, they make you feel their presence, and if you have one attachment, then they can call the others they have their way. I don't know the, you know,
Mhm. Well,
how this, yeah.
well, there's several things that I could speculate on, okay? Because I don't know the answer directly to that question. So I do know that in past lives, I made certain vows to certain entities. So if that's what you mean by an attachment, like whatever, in my seeking in other lives, either of
How do
things,
you know that?
just
How do
my,
you know that?
it's little piece by little piece by little piece, my inner life is built. And I remember several lifetimes very poignantly. Matter of fact, I even had one revealed to me in the mirror one time of a very self-righteous man, right? Very judgmental and self-righteous. And, so when we're talking about these things, I only have to, the only thing I can do is speak of my own experiences. I can't pass them on as real to anybody else, right? I've also had another one, male, being in a dungeon in France, riddled with syphilis and dying. And I sat with that one for quite a long time. And the realizations that came up out of that was it was all the result of sexual play and the really degradation that was going on in the French courts at that time. And I can, that lifetime, that French lifetime, that's played out to me in many, many different vignettes in this lifetime, right? So I'm sitting in this cell, like dungeon, dying, riddled with syphilis, just I look like Golem, basically, with pox and everything. And I'm going through this life and I'm feeling this life and what it did and the lessons of it. And so that lesson came into me in this life, like this is, whatever. So, I can only say that, all the different, and I've known this too for a while now. This lifetime that I'm living right now, I've realized that it's an accumulation of all lifetimes, and I'm living. So all I have right now is the consciousness I am right now. Like you said, hygiene. Like how, I have to practice spiritual hygiene. But that's an
Not just
accumulation.
you.
Yeah,
We
everybody.
all have to.
Yeah. So whatever
Okay,
was,
so you're in Santa Fe. We are back in Santa Fe.
yeah. And
You
so,
had a
yeah,
bad you had a bad night, and then you
yeah.
woke up in the morning. You
Well, I wasn't
had
even,
your coffee and your
I had my coffee.
cigarettes.
I went to a convenience store and got coffee. And so, yeah, and I'm just driving and I get up and now I'm getting up into like through Utah and into Wyoming and then there's snow, not heavy, but snow on the ground. And I'm still thinking about, at one point, I'm like, okay, well, Alaska's too far, and I also don't want to live through 6 months of darkness. I just knew that that would be like not the right thing for me. And so then I thought, well, I'll go up into Banff, I'll go up into Canada. That'll be like up into the high mountains. That would be awesome place for me to, but basically I wanted to find a cave and climb into it, right? I'll just find a cave and I'll climb into it and I'll die. That's what I was thinking. Right? And then that life spark, that thing inside is like, you're not gonna climb into a cave and die. And you can't go to Canada because you can't work there, you know? You don't, it's just like, and so it became obvious that if I was going to, I knew I had to somehow find a way to have some sort of income. So I'm driving north, and then all of a sudden it was Spokane, like in my head, Spokane. And it wouldn't leave me alone, Spokane. So I'm east of Spokane, so I take a hard left towards,
Have, have you
west.
ever been there before? Have you ever been there
I,
before?
a weird trip I took there when I was very young. But, so I knew Spokane. Maybe that's what sparked that in me. And yeah, so I ended up in Spokane. And outside of Spokane, the night before I pulled over my car on a one of those parking off the highway. Well, you've never been in the States, but they have all these rest areas. So I pulled off into a rest area and I'm in a grove of pine trees. And I get out my blanket and I'm going to sleep. And again, this howling, right? This massive wind and howling and rushing water. And I'm like, all these sounds around me. But I did manage to fall asleep. I wake up in the morning, there's no river by me. I'm like, wait a minute, where was I? Anyways, so I drove into Spokane, Washington. And I rented a cheap hotel room. And the rest is my history. But it turned out to be a good place. And I don't think I want to go through Spokane right now because that's another whole nother aspect of it. But it was good for me. And it made me, it was easy and it wasn't expensive. And I was able to get a job and I was able to stabilize. I never talked about this story. I mean, I never did. And even if I tried to tell my friend Lynn, she would always say, I don't understand what you're talking about, but you carry a light and I'm your friend and I'm going to walk beside you. That's all she would ever tell me.
And with time, all these demonic issues fade away.
Yeah, they did. They actually did. And I was in such a humbled state of being, Christian, like I had to find something else that I could surrender to in the moment. And it was like, I didn't know if I would survive. I actually thought I might end up on the street, right? And I just remember, and to this day, I still have them, hundreds of pennies. I'd walk, I'd walk down by the Spokane, the park. I mean, Spokane's beautiful. And if I'd see a penny on the street, I'd pick it up. And every time I picked up a penny, it brought me back to like just being grateful. I don't know why. It was like my lucky pennies, right? I just would find these lucky pennies. I mean, it seems kind of silly, but at the same time, it wasn't. And so very little by little, I got past the fear of talking to other people, that I wasn't going to contaminate them. Survival, survival kicks in. It's like, I'm going to have some sort of income to survive in this place. And yeah, so all of that started being worked out. And then I had other presences, like benevolent presences, just appear just in the nick of time, like to just lift me a little bit. Like when I'd get really
And
depressed.
that's what they do, just that, so you don't drown completely, and then they leave you on your own. So how many years or how long after that you like landed in Ecuador?
Okay, so I ended up in Spokane in 2008. Because I remember, because it was Obama getting elected and all that bullshit and the too big to fail banks and all of that, And I actually watched television for a while just to have something on. It's really before I got into like the internet and what that provided. And at one point I was like, I had to turn it off. Like, this is just crazy, and I could see that the United States had changed a lot since I had lived there before. So I started becoming aware of surveillance, control, a lack of spontaneity in people, a lack of laughter. It's just a lot of things that I was observant of. So yeah, and I ended up through one of my jobs and meeting somebody, I ended up in Ecuador in 2011 for the first time.
Wow. So you were in Spokane for 3 years?
Three towards 4.
3 years.
Yeah. But then I
And
came back.
meanwhile,
No, but then I
you
came back.
never spoke. You
Huh?
never spoke with your daughter, or with. I mean,
No,
did she wrote you like letters, or
no.
no communication? You didn't. She had like she had her daughter in You didn't know
Mhm,
about it, or
mhm. I knew about
that's
she was
that's
pregnant, but I didn't, um, I didn't reach out to her. Matter of fact, that was one of the bad things that they were accusing me of. That Amber was going to give birth to this female child and it was going to be a horrible presence on the planet. I mean, by then the what they were saying to me was like I couldn't process it. That's the truth. I couldn't process it. I just couldn't. I didn't believe it and I didn't disbelieve it. I just
did
couldn't.
you tell them the sex of the child?
Yeah. So, I mean, there was still communication with San Miguel and people in San Miguel and going back and forth and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, um, oof.
Maybe they meant it's gonna be horrible because she's going to like so much ice cream and,
And water
and
balloons.
pollo feliz and pollo feliz, and I mean maybe they were right in some aspects. It is horrible to eat that many ice cream, that much ice cream.
Yeah, well, especially when you have somebody buying you ice cream all the time and feeding your addiction. I think I want to stop with the story right now because I could go on and on, right? I could go through more years of many other things and how I got myself back to the being that and that's the ultimate for me of any learning is that from being totally destroyed, having this horrible curse put on me, from being separated from all of my family and being so utterly alone. Okay, just utterly having to depend on my inner being. Of course, I had like you said, the benevolence that comes in just when you're drowning and it lifts you up. That I found a strength in me. And it's many, many years, and I would say the key to most of that, for me anyways, is that I didn't ever feel like a victim. I never blamed anybody for what they did. And I can,
Maybe
I'm not,
I
I'm,
don't know.
I'm not even here to forgive or
You
not
know,
forgive. It has
some
nothing.
people don't like the victim status. Even I'm not talking about you, but some people, even if they are a victim, they prefer to, you know, look at it from another angle, just so because being a victim is so disempowering. They don't like that.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
well, okay.
Mhm. And, I mean, I can only be the living testament to my own life. Really, that's all I can be. And I can't, and this is where I am right now is like, I'm not the judge or the jury on anyone else's life. And this has been a long, hard thing to get through. And I'm not talking about the people in the Mandato, but I'm talking about just in my everyday encounters with people.
Do you think that thing is still going in Mexico, the Mandato? They still have meetings in
Uh,
some
I actually,
way or shape?
I think they're pretty
You don't.
separated. They have the building, of course, that keeps them somewhere bound together unless they've sold it, and I don't know about that. But no, the energy dispersed. It definitely dispersed because when Alejandro wasn't here any longer, and all the people that I'm talking about, and I'm not like ragging on them or anything. To me, from the perspective where I'm sitting today, they did not have real contact with their higher consciousness. Maybe they found it. I don't know. I don't know. And, I'm not even that curious to find out. But from what I
Okay.
can tell from when I had last had contact, well, you know what the contact was like. It was ridiculous. It
It was
almost,
funny.
it was funny. It was like a clown show. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, and at that point, you've broken free of something when you're laughing about it, like the absolute absurdity. So just another reflection of, multi-layers of people's realities that they're projecting out there and thinking they're very important. And, I mean, there it is, self-importance, right?
A lot of people, I mean, not maybe a lot, but some people do like to project importance, but there is always the acceptance and the willingness of others to go along with that.
Yeah.
So in that regard, you're definitely not a victim because you made your choices, and maybe they, I mean, for sure they helped you and they helped you become the person you are today. So in that regard, there is no question about that.
Yeah. And as anything in my life that I've gone through where it could be perceived I was betrayed or I was lied to or I was used or whatever, could be perceived that way. Because on one level, that's true. But on the other level, it's like, hey, I'd love to have somebody from my past that was one time an adversary walk through my door. I would. I think it would be fascinating to sit down and talk to somebody like that, Like what was going on in your head,
It would be truly fascinating for you to be able to sit down with Alejandro, like in this moment, the way you are now and the way he was like into the 2000, early 2000s.
Yeah.
Because I'm really interested in how the conversation would go down. Like you're right now with him 20 years ago. I think, I mean, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I sense him, like I do have some sort of communication still on a different plane, right? So, but it's very ethereal. I don't really can't even put words on it. But yeah, there's still a connection there. But it doesn't feel scary and it doesn't feel bad and it doesn't feel, I mean, let's say he is Prometheus or was Prometheus or took on the spirit of Prometheus. He certainly thought he did. We're talking about godlike beings, right? I don't know what his, let's say mission or whatever. I mean, if he was anywhere close to any of those things, he's still a conscious being and he's still working. And I would only wish him freedom.
What was his fascination with Germany, with his attraction with Germany and Greece? But
Well,
like you told me about the the Nazis and the Second World War, that he had some opinions about that, and I'm curious why a Mexican sorcerer would have such strong opinions on the way the Wehrmacht conducted the war. I mean,
well, the number one is like, even though he didn't have a father raising him, his father was German. Okay, so he had a German last name, and I can't for the life of me remember it right now.
his biological father was German.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's
abandoned.
interesting.
Okay, I mean, he got raised on the street by a seamstress Mexican woman. So, and he looked German, and he portrayed himself like a German. I mean, he had a certain noble character about him, right?
Okay.
He didn't look Mexican. I mean, he didn't at all. And that's the first time, well, he would always talk about the Fuhrer with great admiration. He never got into what happened with the Nazis or anything. He just had this extreme admiration of the Fuhrer. And
Where do you think that came from?
I think his German ancestry in a way. And also, if you really know anything about the Greeks and philosophy, and I mean, the Greeks were attaining, let's say, a high level of philosophical thought. Like they were deep thinkers and, so he had a lot of admiration for that. Like, and the Greeks were, attempting to make the human into the best possible form it could, physically, mentally, spiritually, in every way, right? So he held that Greek philosophy, and so he would look at people, and I can see this transfer to Adolf Hitler, who had the highest ideal for the human race, talking about his nation, talking about his people, wanted, had this great desire for a benevolent type of, let's say, leadership or fatherhood. Fatherhood would be a good word. So Alejandro held those ideals very highly. And he was always looking at humanity in disgust. The state of humanity to him was disgusting. The lower impulses, the lack of care, the slothliness of humans, all of that was very difficult for him. I mean, I don't know if it was difficult, but I mean, it truly ate away at him. There you go, Prometheus. It ate away at him. So when he would talk about the Fuhrer, I mean, that rocked my whole belief and my whole paradigm. Because like everybody else, I was raised to believe in the Holocaust and that Adolf Hitler was the most evil man on the planet, and everybody had to hate him. So that's what actually originally sparked me to start looking at it differently. But you see, he was
You carried out you carried that belief system. You carried it over the years, like
when I was young, everybody did. It was just like you believed.
No. I mean what Alejandro thought about the Führer. You are pretty much think the same thing today, right?
In a lot of ways. I wouldn't know exactly, but what I had to do was get past like a huge taboo. Like the minute I thought Adolf Hitler wasn't the most evil man that ever lived, I felt like everything in society was going to shame me and put me down. And how dare I think that thought? Like it was like, how dare you think that thought? So it wasn't, so I had to do quiet exploration, and then I really got into it, I don't know, whenever I started making videos and stuff about it, when I really started to dig into the real material that's out there, and it tears apart that narrative. If you study the real material that's out there and the studies that have been done up to now, you know that it was a big lie. It was one huge propaganda piece. And we're living under the same propaganda right now. It's the same thing. Nothing has changed.
Except this Vladimir Putin now is not Adolf Hitler.
He's not. He's not, I mean, but
No,
that's,
yeah.
People do make, and I do, I mean, you can't help but make some sort of parallel to the position he's in the world today, and the words he says, but it's not the same world, and he's not the savior. So, and neither was Adolf Hitler. He wasn't trying to be a savior, although I think he was perfectly aware of what the enemy was. So that's kind of like,
do you think Hitler had his shortcomings, his blind spots? Do you think he had those kind of things?
if you're in the physical form, of course you do. It's part of the game. Because you have a human form, and so no matter how psychic you are, or no matter how deep insights you can have, you're still under the influence of the people, words, things around you. Although he did say, and I haven't seen the quote, but my friends told me it, that, at the end of his life, he goes, it won't matter the end right now, because in 70 or 80 years, it's all going to come back. Like he had insight, for sure, certainly he did. you know, he also said, it doesn't matter that you kill me. Someday it'll be proven I was right. So, you know, at this point, for me,
Do you think YouTube has an algorithm or for how much you mention a person, or like,
say that again. I
I don't
didn't
know.
understand the question.
Do you think YouTube has an algorithm? Like if you mention Adolf Hitler too many times in
Oh,
your recording gets flagged, or
yeah.
maybe not, I don't know,
I don't,
distributed that much, or
I don't think
I'm
it's,
curious. I mean,
oh, yeah. I mean, we had videos taken down. So yeah, I know. But it's more like in the titles and the written
yeah,
and not so much within the context of like you and I speaking right now. And, you know, there's other things that people might want to be aware of right now, like communication, use handwriting instead of typing. Like, I mean, we're playing in this, and I call it a game, and I used to hate to use that word, but in a way it is a game. Like our consciousness collectively and individually, especially when we can get into, you know, the individuated realized self, when it becomes that, and then there's a building of consciousness, AI can't do anything about that. It can't. Because we're in a creative field. I mean, it's part of our imagination, it's lack of fear, it's comprehending really, like, I feel like we're getting closer and closer, and I'm using we in the sense of collective consciousness, to really getting to the real gnosis of what this reality is really, how it's really formed.
do
Energy.
you think you met Alejandro in a past lifetime?
Oh, definitely. Definitely in Greece, definitely. Yeah,
Okay, so you're sure. That's
yeah. I mean, I can't place him as a figure in history or anything like that, but I do have little snippets of my own memory from Cyprus and being in different temples. So yeah. And you know what I said last time, Christian, and then
and you are a high priestess, or what?
I was up there
Something like that.
and I was taken down. I was taken down by intrigue and envy and jealousies, and I remember walking out on a parapet overlooking the Mediterranean and just accepting it. I was just accepting it, you know. I mean, whatever I have, I somehow have this fairly deep part of me that's just accepts.
What else can you do? Maybe you should write a book. Like, I know you had plans to do it, but maybe you should do it. Like,
Well,
just write a book and
someday I will.
call it Tiger Tales, or call it whatever, and just
I actually have taken a lot of my writing and I'm putting it in one document. So that's a start, right? But you know, I look back on what I wrote on Tiger Tales and I'm like, I'm already in another place of comprehension about all of that. So, you know, it's sweet.
yeah,
I'm
everything
gonna
changes.
I'm gonna stop our recording at least for a moment, and I gotta go attend something, and I'll be right back. Okay? Guess what I have
Okay.
to attend? I'll be right back. I'm back. Oh my gosh, you took me down a path that I didn't know we were gonna do. I said I wasn't gonna do it, and you said, "Oh yes, you are." Couple thoughts occurred to me before I actually end our recording. As we're speaking, right? Things kind of are revealing right along with the speech. And let's just go next time we get together, let's really speak to how we perceive what is creating reality. Are you up for that?
Sure, but that may be like very short, like a 3 minute podcast or
I don't
I
think
mean,
so, Christian. We'll see.
do
We'll
you
see.
think you can talk half an hour or an hour about, I mean,
Well,
okay, maybe.
I didn't think I would talk this long today, so I don't know how long we can speak, but I do think there's some, let's say it's like trying to put perceptual, unseen comprehension or data or perceptions and bring it into the human language. It sometimes takes a lot more words than you would think.
Well, you can talk about a painting or a portrait or a flower. You can talk about it for hours and hours. So I guess any subject can be, you know,
Mhm.
you can talk about anything for a long time, but we'll see.
Yeah. And so maybe, my friend from Romania will maybe talk a little bit more about himself. I ended up talking a lot today, but yeah. Anyways,
We'll see. But we'll see what we can do about that too. I mean,
about him
have to
talking.
ask your friend. Yeah,
I will ask
we
my
have to
friend.
ask your
I tried to
friend
trick
from
you, and
Romania,
then
and
my friend from Romania, I tried to get you, like, hook you right in right away in the beginning, and you slipped away.
but see, I don't have this like you have these amazing stories. Like they can make a Netflix, you know, like two seasons or 3 seasons, and I mean that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, but you know what you have? You have something that very few people have. And that's a lot of time alone, and specifically with nature and a perceptual reality that very few people tap into. So it actually takes quite a bit to bring that into focus into the verbal space.
So that's another way of saying I'm half autistic, weird, middle-aged man.
No, you put those words out there. You're funny, but maybe you are. But, that's a misunderstanding we have in this stupid modern medical mafia mindset, is that people that are different get slapped with labels. I'm totally not with that program. What you have is called magic.
Okay, let's go with that.
Okay.
Sounds sounds awesome. I can even wear a cape. I mean, it's gonna be audio only, but I can wear a cape like and
Yeah.
feel like special.
Okay.
Oh
All
my
right.
God.
Get
Uh,
out your amulets and your trinkets and all of that, and spread them out on the table.
I
And
was I was joking. I'm
I
not
know
gonna
you
wear
were. I
anything.
know you were.
Jesus.
Anyways, uh, love you as always.
But you know, no,
What?
no, 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 no. You
Okay.
know, we're not done with you. We're
Okay.
not, I mean,
Not done with
we're
me.
done for today. We're done for today, but next time there are
Okay.
other things to pick up, like, and at some point we have to go all the way to Corey Good because
Oh
that's
my God. Okay.
juicy and
Well,
yeah.
it's perfect, Christian. I'm very happy because I guess in some way this needs to be verbalized and put out there if anybody's interested. I have no idea. Uh, but it is my narrative, right? It is my life. These are not like, so may it serve. So we maybe not be done with me, but we're going to weave a little of you into it too.
Yeah, that's gonna be boring, but we will.
Do you still go and look at Board Panda? You haven't showed me anything from Board Panda anymore.
I don't actually, I for for years now because they're so woke and like pro everything. I'm not pro, and so no, I'm
No, it's
like
not.
one. They had cute things, and some of their articles were awesome, but they got so woke, and I can't just. I'm done.
Right. Yeah, maybe at some point too, we'll talk about the state of the world, the wokeness. I think that's really funny that they call it woke. I mean, this is how the dark hand operates. It inverts everything.
Yeah, I never actually went past. I'm still upset of the gay people, the fact that they took the rainbow. I'm like, I so much like the rainbow colors altogether, and
Mhm.
I don't want to be identified as gay. So I'm still upset with that. That's still a problem with me. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
so
mean, why
all we have
can
to
you be
do,
gay and just take some other symbol, but don't take the rainbow? Like, are you for real? Like, all and the native people have the rainbow warriors, and they have this. I mean, it's so old. It's like you can imagine for thousands of years, people saw the rainbow on the sky and they made these legends and belief system and this and that. Not to mention it's awesome. And now if I want to paint a rainbow or wear a rainbow t-shirt, I'm gay. So yeah.
that's what they do. I know. And I've been saying to friends and stuff, we have to take the rainbow back. We also have to take the moon back. We really have to.
Who took
I'll
the
talk,
moon?
um,
Where did the moon go?
well, I'll talk about that on another recording. Okay?
The-
This
Yeah.
one's it.
Okay,
This
maybe we
one's,
start the record. We
huh?
start the recording and you tell me after we
Okay.
start the recording. I mean, I
Okay.
have to know who took the moon.
Okay.
I
All
think
right. I'm
it's
gonna
still
stop
there, but
I'll stop the recording. Because I think this has gone way over an hour already. And we have to leave something for the next chapter, right? We'll talk about the moon.
okay.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay.